the mission that almost ended our dream of Mars. One mission nearly erased Mars from humanity's future. It didn't fail loudly. It failed in a way that made doubt spread quietly, mission by mission. And for a moment, everything stopped. That pause in progress represented more than technical setback. It threatened to sever the psychological connection between humanity and the red planet entirely. To understand why this moment still matters today, we need to revisit a time when Mars exploration balanced on uncertainty. Success was never guaranteed. Every launch carried risk, and every failure carried consequences far beyond engineering. Mars mattered because belief in reaching it was fragile. Public support depended on momentum, and momentum depended on success. Early Mars missions were experimental by necessity. Computers were weak. Communication was delayed. Navigation relied on calculations pushed to their limits. When things worked, it felt miraculous. When they didn't, confidence cracked. The margin between triumph and catastrophe remained razor-thin throughout those pioneering years. Then came a mission that changed the tone entirely. A spacecraft sent with high expectations, carrying years of planning and public hope. But somewhere between Earth and Mars, something went wrong. Signals became erratic. Telemetry stopped making sense. And then, silence. The void of communication lasted long enough for anxiety to transform into certainty. The failure wasn't immediately understood. Engineers searched for explanations. Data fragments, timing errors, unit mismatches. Mars acclaimed another mission, and this time it felt different. It wasn't bad luck. It was human error layered with complexity. The realization that avoidable mistakes had caused a loss intensified the psychological impact. Public trust wavered. Funding came under scrutiny. Mars was no longer framed as a challenge to solve, but a risk to avoid. For a brief period, the question shifted from when we would return to whether we should. That shift in framing represented a fundamental change in how the endeavor was perceived. That mission did not just fail technically, it shook belief. And belief, as it turned out, was as essential as fuel. The aftermath of that failed mission rippled through the space community. Investigations began immediately, not to assign blame, but to understand how something so carefully designed could unravel. What they uncovered was unsettling. The findings challenged assumptions about competence and coordination. The failure did not stem from a single broken component. It emerged from a chain of small assumptions. A mismatch in measurement units. A breakdown in communication between teams. Processes that worked independently, but failed together. Mars exposed the cost of complexity without cohesion. The investigation revealed systemic vulnerabilities that extended beyond any individual error. As details became public, confidence eroded further. Critics questioned whether Mars was worth the risk. Budgets tightened. Timelines stretched. Missions were delayed or canceled. Mars exploration entered a quiet pause, not by decree, but by hesitation. The institutional will to continue had weakened at multiple levels. Engineers were forced to confront uncomfortable truths. Success depended not only on advanced technology, but on discipline, clarity, and shared understanding. Mars punished complacency without warning. The planet demanded standards that exceeded what had been achieved. This moment reshaped how missions were built. Redundancy increased. Verification became stricter. Collaboration deepened. Failure was no longer treated as inevitable, but as something to be systematically prevented. The culture of exploration transformed in response to loss. Still, the damage lingered. Mars had gained a reputation as unforgiving, a place where small errors became irreversible losses. The dream of reaching it felt fragile again, hanging on trust that had to be rebuilt carefully. That fragility persisted even as technical capabilities improved. Yet within that crisis, something shifted. The failure forced a cultural change. Mars was no longer approached with optimism alone, but with humility, and that change would quietly redefine every mission that followed. The conflict created by that mission went beyond engineering. It became philosophical. Mars was no longer just a destination. It was a test of whether humanity could learn from its own mistakes. The planet had become examiner as much as target. Internally, agencies faced pressure to prove competence. Externally, They faced skepticism from the public and policymakers. Each proposed mission had to justify not only its purpose, but its probability of success. Mars demanded accountability at a level never required before. The bar for approval had risen permanently. This scrutiny exposed a deeper tension. Exploration thrives on risk, but institutions fear failure. Mars sat at the intersection of ambition and caution. Move too fast, and errors multiply. Move too slowly, and progress stalls. Finding the balance proved more difficult than any technical challenge. Engineers adapted by changing mindset. Instead of asking whether systems would work, they asked how they might fail. Worst-case scenarios became standard planning. Mars forced a shift from hope-driven design to failure-driven resilience. That transformation affected every aspect of mission architecture. The psychological impact was equally significant. Teams carried the weight of past mistakes into every decision. Each success was measured against the memory of loss. Mars had become personal. Engineers felt responsibility not just to current missions, but to the legacy of those that had failed. This period redefined exploration culture. It slowed the pace, but strengthened the foundation. Missions became fewer, but more deliberate. Precision replaced bravado. The change represented maturation rather than retreat. The conflict was not resolved by avoiding Mars. It was resolved by committing to it differently, by accepting that reaching Mars required not perfection, but responsibility. That acceptance marked a turning point in how humanity approached the red planet. And only by confronting that conflict directly did the dream of Mars survive at all. The climax of this story is not the failure itself, but what followed it. The moment humanity realized Mars would not forgive carelessness. That exploration without discipline leads only to silence. The understanding arrived painfully, but it arrived in time. That mission forced a reckoning. Mars was no longer a dream powered by optimism. It became a responsibility shaped by consequence. Every future launch carried the weight of that lesson. Every calculation mattered. Every assumption was questioned. The standards that emerged from failure exceeded those that preceded it. The resolution came quietly through changed behavior, better systems, stronger collaboration, slower, more deliberate progress. Mars did not become easier. We became more careful. The planet remained exactly as demanding as before. The difference lay entirely in human approach. Today, that near ending of the Mars dream stands as a turning point, proof that setbacks can either end ambition or refine it. Mars chose neither path for us. It waited, and in that waiting, it demanded growth. The planet offered no shortcuts and no second chances. It simply persisted. The dream survived not because failure was erased, but because it was understood. Mars did not test our technology alone. It tested our ability to learn. That test continues with each new mission, each new challenge, each new opportunity to demonstrate that the lessons have been internalized. The question lingers over every proposal, every budget debate, every engineering decision. Have we internalized what Mars taught us, or are we merely confident that this time will be different? The answer will emerge not in statements, but in actions, not in plans, but in outcomes. Mars waits, as it always has, patient, unforgiving, ready to test the next generation just as it tested those who came before. The only variable that changes is us. So, what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again? The